Tonight, John Swinney orders an independent review of the SNP's complaints procedure. It comes after Jordan Linden, a former council leader, is convicted of sexual assault. One of his victims says the party diminished allegations about Linden's behaviour.
I think the SNP have handled it horrendously, the way they've tried to avoid the situation, downplay it and outcall not just myself but a lot of the other victims liars.
Also on tonight's programme, police launched dawn raids following a 2-year investigation into organised crime. 13 arrests are made here and in Spain in an operation targeting alleged members of Scotland's dominant crime group. The family of an Aberdeen man say they're desperate to get him moved from a hospital in Northampton being investigated over allegations of abuse of patient.
And in sport, as Steve Clark says his team to face Japan tomorrow might raise an eyebrow. A familiar face watched on as the Scotland squad were put through their final paces.
I'm Laura Goodwin, this is Reporting Scotland. John Swinney has ordered an independent review of the SNP's complaints procedure after a former council leader was found guilty of 5 sexual assaults against young men. Some witnesses in the case of Jordan Linden claimed their complaints were downplayed or ignored by the SNP. We've spoken to one victim who claims he and others were called liars. Our political correspondent Phil Sim has more.
I'm Councillor Jordan Linden, leader of the opposition group for the SNP in North Lanarkshire Council.
At one point in his career, it seemed like Jordan Linden was on his way to the top. Chair of the National Youth Parliament, leader of one of the country's largest councils. But instead of plotting a move to Holyrood, he is now on the sex offenders register. Yesterday, he was convicted of 5 sexual assaults against young men and of sending unwanted sexual communications to teenagers, one of them as young as 14. Some of those who complained about Linden are critical of how things were handled.
I think the SNP have handled it horrendously, the way they've tried to avoid the situation, downplay it and outcall not just myself but a lot of the other victims liars and that they weren't aware of the situation. I've seen the statement they put out saying they were only aware of one, but I know personally some of the other victims that came forward did approach the SNP and made them aware of it.
This morning, the SNP's Westminster leader said he was horrified by the case and said victims do deserve answers.
I'm angry that they've had to go through what they've had to go through. It's simply not good enough. I'm glad that they had the courage and confidence to go to the police and to see justice happen. And that'll obviously conclude on the 5th of May, and I'm sure at that time the party will be in a position to address those comments in full.
The SNP has now announced an independent review of its complaints process to ensure it is as robust as can be. The Scottish Youth Parliament has already held a similar review. This MSP was also a member there, and he says it needs to happen across society.
We do need to look at making sure every organisation, not just in politics, but every organisation in our communities has strong safeguarding processes in place so that anyone who is a victim of that kind of behaviour can feel confident to come forward knowing that justice will be done. Thankfully, eventually in this case, justice has been done.
Linden will be sentenced in May, but this is a case which could have far wider implications.
And Phil joins us now. Phil, what could those implications be?
Well, there are clearly questions for the SNP. They have announced this independent review. It's actually not the first time they've announced a review. Hamza Yousaf announced something similar back in 2023. We have already had Labour and the Conservatives kind of jumping in, saying there are questions to be answered, and you know, fair enough, there are. But there are broader questions too, broader issues, because this is not the first politician to have been in a bit of bother in recent years. We've seen it all different levels of seriousness, all different parties too. In fact, just this month we saw a report that there have been 84 complaints of harassment and bullying at the Scottish Parliament in the last 5 years. So there are certainly questions for individual parties, but this is also hugely damaging for politics as a whole. You know, public trust in politicians is already very low. Stuff like this just undermines it even further, and in many ways it's damaging to democracy itself. You know, we are standing at the beginning of an election campaign, so this is the sort of thing that should be of huge concern to all parties.
OK, Phil, many thanks. In the early hours of this morning, raids like this one were taking place simultaneously at properties here and in Spain as part of an investigation into serious organised crime, including drugs and money laundering. The operation targeted alleged members of Scotland's dominant crime group, the Lions. 8 people were arrested in Lanarkshire, Glasgow and West Lothian, with another 5 arrested in Spain. Our Home Affairs correspondent David Cowan has this report.
Thank you for attending the briefing this morning.
At 3 this morning, a briefing at Motherwell Police Station, the culmination of a 2-year inquiry targeting alleged members of the Lions crime group.
The intention today is to trace and arrest a significant nominal who is wanted on a petition arrest warrant regarding their involvement in serious and organised crime.
Officers from Spain's Guardia Civil were there. Scottish detectives had travelled to Spain. Since 2024, regular meetings have been held between the international partners, combing through data that led to this day of action.
It's now 20-4 here in Motherwell, 20-5 in Spain, and the joint operation's getting underway.
The police were raiding 8 addresses in Lanarkshire, Glasgow and West Lothian. The operation in Scotland and Spain was coordinated, hitting the doors at the same time. This team headed to a detached house in a smart housing estate. They used specialist equipment to prise the door open. 8 arrests were made in Scotland this morning, 5 in Spain.
Today, hopefully it demonstrates to the public that we are targeting those involved in serious organised crime, and we will not leave any stone unturned. We will target you whether you're here or abroad, and we'll relentlessly come after you.
What are the allegations against the individuals that you've been investigating? What are the alleged crimes?
So, high-level involvement in organised crime is what we're investigating at the moment.
The police say the investigation is not connected to the murders of 2 senior members of the Lions crime group, Eddie Lyons Jr. and Ross Monaghan, in Fengarola last year. It was already underway before the gangland's feuds broke out in central Scotland last March. Spanish and Scottish investigators started working together in May 2024 at Eurojust, the European Union Agency for Criminal Justice Cooperation. Today, Eurojust said the group is suspected of running a prolific criminal network involved in the transport of large quantities of drugs, including hundreds of kilograms of cocaine, into Scotland. From the profits of the drug trafficking, an international money laundering network was established, involving several million euros feeding back into their criminal enterprise. Those allegations will have to be proved in court. A long legal road lies ahead, here and in Spain. David Cowan reporting Scotland, Lanarkshire.
The family of a Scottish man say they're desperate to get him moved from a scandal-hit hospital in England as they fear for his safety. Jordan Jones was left brain damaged after being attacked in Aberdeen in 2016. The hospital where he's being cared for is now under scrutiny after a number of staff were arrested over allegations of abuse and ill treatment of patients. The NHS in England is advising its patients are removed from the facility. Rebecca Curran reports.
Jordan Jones is happiest when family comes to visit. For the past 6 years, the 36-year-old has been a patient at St Andrew's Healthcare in Northampton, hundreds of miles from home. His aunt Caroline, who's also his legal guardian, now fears for his safety following allegations of abuse involving staff there.
You don't expect to put your loved one that's had a traumatic brain injury into facilitation that's going to abuse and neglect him. And he desperately needs to be home for the support that his family give him.
How worried are you about Jordan?
Extremely worried. Every day I worry about Jordan.
The hospital is at the centre of multiple police investigations. 15 staff members have been arrested since October 2024 following allegations of rape, ill treatment and neglect. 10 people remain under investigation and have been bailed or released pending inquiries. The situation has prompted NHS England to seek to remove hundreds of patients over safety concerns. The hospital says patient well-being remains their priority. Caroline makes the nearly 500-mile trip from Aberdeen to visit Jordan every month. His care costs hundreds of thousands of pounds a year and is paid for by Aberdeen City Health and Social Care Partnership. Caroline says she's been asking for years for him to be moved.
He's been put through enough. I just want some help to get him home, where he belongs, just worrying constantly. I've felt that bad about it that I've contacted social work in Aberdeen, and I would rather have Jordan in a cell in Peterhead Prison for protection. That's how much I am worried about him being where he is.
Aberdeen Health and Social Care Partnership says it's working to relocate 2 patients at the hospital. NHS Grampian also confirmed that other patients from the region remain at the facility, and work is ongoing to secure alternative placements. For Jordan and his family, the hope is a move comes sooner rather than later. Rebecca Curran, reporting Scotland, Aberdeen.
Some of the day's other stories now. 2 more men have been arrested after trouble at the Scottish Cup quarter-final between Rangers and Celtic at Ibrox earlier this month. A 27-year-old's been charged in connection with offences including breach of the peace, possessing an offensive weapon and assaulting a police officer. A 26-year-old's been charged in connection with an assault. Both were released and are due in court at a later date. 9 people were arrested on the day of the match. Researchers at Strathclyde University say they're closer to identifying the differences displayed by babies with autism. They've been looking at the facial and verbal communication that develops before speech and language. They noticed that even though the babies were too young to speak, the interactions between parent and child were not random. It suggests they could detect neurodivergent children at an earlier stage. And more businesses affected by the fire near Central Station will be able to reopen. A large cordon in the surrounding streets is being eased slightly, but the bulk of the cordon will remain for now, which means much of Gordon Street is still closed off. Glasgow City Council says the cordon will be kept under review and eased further as and when it's safe to do so. West Coast ferry operator Calmac says almost every island served by a major vessel is facing disruption due to an unprecedented shortage of ships. 3 large ferries, including its 2 newest vessels, are unavailable while faults are investigated. 4 other ships are away for annual maintenance. People in affected communities are calling for Scotland's politicians to fix the ferry service as they embark on the Holyrood election campaign. Here's our political correspondent, Andrew Kerr.
It's full steam ahead for this ferry today, only just back in service, and for our politicians as they look to pick up votes. Calmac say there was disruption affecting virtually every island served by a major vessel. In Barra, business can't be brisk because of the ferry outage.
Well, we find ourselves just at the start of the tourist season with the most disruption I think we've seen. They've been reconfiguring timetables, moving bookings about. Islanders and community members don't know if they're coming or going. So what chance does somebody come into the island to visit for the first time? It's so off-putting.
How to fix it? After 19 years in government, the SNP bear the brunt of the criticism with the uncertain helming of the 2 new Clyde-built ferries.
It is a national disgrace, and John Swinney should take personal responsibility for this absolute farce. Our island communities have been completely and utterly betrayed. This is real people unable to go to work, unable to go about their daily business, in some cases unable to attend medical appointments.
Other parties have been setting out their blueprints.
So what we would do is we would change the system so we don't have this triumvirate approach where passing the buck is always the case. Instead, government will take responsibility. We'll make sure we're building in Scotland rather than contracts going abroad, and we'll make sure islanders are actually on these boards making the decisions for their communities, not an afterthought under this SNP government.
Island communities and coastal communities engulfing our ferry fleet in absolute crisis, and we need better than that. The Lib Dems would bring forward a ferries bill into the next Parliament which would put communities at the heart of ferry procurement.
The SNP say they have a plan of action.
The government's obviously put a significant amount of resource into making sure that the island communities, the needs of the people who live in the island communities and those who wish to visit are met. I think everyone's familiar with the challenges that have existed in relation to securing consistency of service, but the priority within government in relation to this hasn't changed, and it won't change after the election.
Calmac has apologised to passengers, but islanders say they expect their political leaders to set a more prosperous course on day one after the election. Andrew Kerr, reporting Scotland.
Our transport correspondent David Henderson joins us now. David, CalMac saying there that almost every island served by one of their major vessels is facing disruption. How are things looking tonight?
Well, that disruption continues, Laura. CalMac have an ageing fleet of ferries, so they've had to get used to managing problems on the network, whether it's because of breakdowns or the need for regular maintenance. But this time the problem seems to be on a different scale, with 7 ferries still out of action for a second day in a row. That's why the CalMac boss, Duncan Mackison, has called this unprecedented, and he said he's profoundly sorry. Now, there'll be particular concern about Glen Sannox. This is the main ferry on CalMac's busiest route, the Arran Run. It only joined the CalMac fleet last January, but it's been out of action in that time for something like 4 months of that time. And CalMac say tonight that Glen Sannox will not be back in service before Tuesday. That's getting pretty close to that busy Easter holiday period. Now, we heard ideas from politicians today about how to solve CalMac's problems, but these sound like longer-term problems, not the sort of short-term fixes that CalMac seems to need.
OK, David, many thanks indeed. Reform UK's Scottish leader has been defending comments he made at a rugby dinner in 2018 that have been labelled racist and homophobic. Malcolm Offord gave his first on-camera interview since the story broke on a campaign visit to Peterhead, where he'd pointed out that he'd apologised and made a donation to an LGBT-inclusive rugby club. He said there was fake outrage in the media about the comments. Offord was asked by our political correspondent Andrew Kerr if he was fit to be First Minister.
Absolutely, but it's for other people to judge my character, my integrity, and that's why I'm putting myself forward. It's for people to judge that. On that particular incident, I came straight out and admitted my mistake and gave the detail to it. I didn't hide a single thing about it. I think honesty is a key characteristic for any politician.
Well, it's been called homophobic and racist, so why, as a straight, white, wealthy man, did you decide to punch down on gay people and ethnic minorities?
Well, that was certainly not the intention. I've never had any track record of doing that.
But it was a crude and vile joke, so why do that?
It was an inappropriate joke, but it had no malice in it, and certainly didn't have any discrimination in it, and people who know me would know that to be the case.
Well, elsewhere, another Reform Holyrood election candidate has pulled out. The party now has 5 vacancies, although Malcolm Offord has said they'll be filled. Now, outside of fashion and pop culture circles, she may not have been a household name, but Paisley-born Pam Hogg, who died last year, certainly dressed many of them. Kylie Minogue and Blondie's Debbie Harry are just a couple of the stars who coveted Hogg's clothing style. Tonight, the designer's friend, Trainspotting author Irvine Welsh, is hosting an event in her hometown to celebrate her legacy. Our arts correspondent Pauline McLean has been talking to him.
She was incredibly ubiquitous. I mean, I remember one time I met her at in the squat party in Hackney, and she was just like, she just basically kind of commanded the room and just talked to everybody. And then it was like about a week later, I was booked to her in America, and I went to this kind of swanky rooftop party in Manhattan, and there she is, Hoggie's kind of standing there with a glass in her hand, just kind of chatting to all these sort of New York celebrities. She got everywhere.
Because she always really cherished her Scottish roots, didn't she? I mean, she talked about making clothes in her father's shed. She talked about, she was visiting Paisley Museum in her lunch hour, I think she said, when she was a schoolgirl, to look at the looms and the patterns. And all of that comes into her work, doesn't it?
Yeah, she was basically, I think she was like basically a punk rock Paisley seamstress. She wanted to, everything she did with her work was very hands-on. She couldn't, she didn't really want a lot of other people messing with it. So she was kind of in this Dickensian workshop in Dalston that she had. She was just kind of sewing away, until her hands were practically falling off.
This is the first public event to be held in her hometown since she died. It's a sellout, and people obviously very keen to celebrate her, just as you're saying, to celebrate that legacy.
Her legacy will be as an artist, I'm convinced about that. Most of all, I think of her in London. She was a great friend to so many people, and she brought so many different people together. I was talking to people that I've known for years and years, and I didn't know they knew Pam, but they were so close to her, basically. So she moved in all these different circles.
Irvin Welsh speaking to our arts correspondent Pauline McLean. Right, time now for sport with Jane. And listen, as if excitement isn't building already, but we've got a friendly with Japan to whet our appetites.
Yeah, the countdown, of course, to the World Cup, and these are just the opening World Cup warm-up matches to come. And the first one, tomorrow against Japan. And Scotland boss Steve Clarke admits that the team selection for that friendly against Japan may raise a few eyebrows as some players return from long-term injuries. And after watching other home nations fail to qualify for this summer's World Cup, he says it shows how big an achievement it was to finish top of their group and book their place at the tournament. Here's Sheila McLaren.
Thank you very much. Pleasure. Thank you.
A familiar face was back in Glasgow to take in Scotland's training session in the shadow of Hampden. Celtic hero Shinsuke Nakamura joined the sizable Japanese media presence, casting their eyes over Steve Clarke's side. Tomorrow's match kicks off Scotland's World Cup preparations, and the head coach knows exactly what he wants to get out of it.
For us is to look at one or two things that are different, maybe look at one or two different personnel across the squad, try and use as many players as possible over the two games, but also to try and get positive results that we can continue to feel good about ourselves. Obviously we've got quite a number of players that are maybe coming back from a longer term injury or who are carrying little niggles at this stage of the season, so some of the selections might raise an eyebrow a little bit.
Here's what Scotland are up against tomorrow. Japan are ranked 19th in the world. That's 19 places above Scotland. They were the first team out with the hosts to qualify for this summer's tournament. And this will be their 8th World Cup in a row.
The World Cup is coming soon, so both team is can see what they want to do.
And who do you think will win?
Dreams are over after crashing out of the playoffs last night.
It was nice to be in a position where we weren't involved in those games, and I think it also shows the measure of how well our team did in actually qualifying direct for that tournament. So to finish top of our group in front of a really good Denmark and Greece side was something that we should be proud of. Thought it was good.
Well, tomorrow could mark a special night for this man here. Of course, the Scotland captain, Andy Robertson. He's in line to make his 91st appearance for the national side, which will see him become Scotland's joint second most capped player and edging closer to Sir Kenny Dalglish, who with 102 caps holds the most appearance for the men's national sides.
The Kenny one goes through my head every time I see him. Probably we kind of have a laugh and a joke about it. You know, his reply to me is there's more national games now than there was back then. So I think he'd like to attempt to get his boots back on probably and rack up a couple more. But no, look, it's playing for your country tomorrow night. I'll hopefully get my 91st cap and I can equal Jim Leighton, and then I become joint second, which kind of just waiting to kind of get to this moment. And tomorrow night that moment will come, and it'll be nice to equal. Jim's a legend. What a goalkeeper he was for Scotland, what a career he had, and to equal somebody like that is pretty special. And then then I'll maybe set sights on number one.
Yeah, should be a special night for him. Hopefully it's a good night for Scotland as well. You can watch all the action, Scotland against Japan, live on BBC One Scotland tomorrow evening. The coverage starts at 4:30. Now, Scots David Law and Ewan Walker are both 5 shots off the lead at golf's Indian Open, but it's been a frustrating second round for Callum Hill. Resuming the day on 3 under, he briefly... That's all your sport for us this evening, but tomorrow, of course, plenty more on Report in Scotland and across the BBC outlets covering, hopefully, a Scotland victory against Japan.
Fingers
Kick-off
crossed.
5 o'clock.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jane, very much indeed. Gillian, clocks go forward, don't they, this weekend?
Yes, but the weather hasn't got the memo.
No, because does that not mean we're technically into is it British summertime that we're into?
Right. Yes, that's right. So there will be some sunshine, but also plenty of showers, which is what we've had today. So it's staying changeable over the weekend, Laura. Good evening to you. There was some sunshine around today, but we've also had really blustery winds driving in plenty of showers. Bit of a wintry flavour to some of those showers as well, and that changeable spring weather is sticking with us over the weekend. More showers to come tonight and tomorrow. Bit of a lull tomorrow night, but then you can see we have a frontal system bringing wet and windy weather to start the day on Sunday. Tonight, plenty more showers to come. They'll be wintry on high ground, and they'll band together to give a longer spell of rain, sleet and snow through the early hours. Snow falling down to about 200 metres. Could be some significant accumulations above about 300. It's a cold night. Temperatures not far off freezing. Could be some icy patches, and the black discs here indicating wind gusts. Still gale force for the northern and western Isles. So tomorrow a windy start. That rain, sleet and snow pulls away and skies will brighten. So there will be some spells of sunshine, but still showers following in from the northwest. This is the picture around about 3 o'clock. You can see still those very gusty winds for the northern and western Isles. Plenty of showers for the Northern Isles, the North Highlands, the northeast, but some decent sunny spells on offer as well. A few of those showers could still be on the heavy side with a risk of hail and thunder, but they'll tend to ease as the afternoon goes on. After that chilly start, temperatures struggling a wee bit, 7 to 9 Celsius for most of us, and feeling chillier in exposure to that breeze. Tomorrow evening, showers fade for a time, but it doesn't last long because overnight, thickening cloud, bringing further spells of rain and hail snow, the winds picking up once again, and it will be a chilly night. So the clocks go forward tomorrow night into Sunday, meaning we lose an hour, and of course it will be a wee bit darker for a time again in the morning and brighter in the evening. But actually for Sunday morning, you might want to stay in your bed anyway because it's dreich. Lots of rain, brisk winds, that persistent rain clearing away and skies will brighten. Some sunny spells for the afternoon, but again, plenty of showers, wintry on the hills, risk of hail and thunder and strong to gale force winds. Laura, bit of everything.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Gillian. Now tonight's main news again. John Swinney orders an independent review of the SNP's complaints procedure after a former council leader is convicted of sexual assault. 13 arrests are made here and in Spain in an operation targeting alleged members of Scotland's dominant crime group. I'll be here with your late news at around 10:30 tonight. Until then, from everyone on the team, have a great weekend when it comes. Bye-bye.